Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be presenting our behavior change project for SPCE 611. The study that we chose to replicate focused on using video modeling and self-evaluation to increase the accuracy of yoga poses. First, we're going to do some introductions with our group members. I'm Rachel McManaman. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and this is my 4th semester in Ball State's ABA program. I chose to replicate this study because as a group, we had decided that we wanted to focus on a behavior change that had some sort of physical activity aspect to it, because we all felt that that was an area that we could improve on. And then as far as yoga, this is something that I'm relatively inexperienced with, so I thought it would be interesting to see what kind of results we could get, especially using the video modeling, which is something that I use very often in my current job. For this presentation, I'm going to be going over what video modeling is along with some of the current literature, and then I'm going to outline our study.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zach Schrader. I'm from Rochester, New York. This is also my 4th semester at BSU. My interest in this study for replication was based around increasing physical activity, like Rachel had touched upon, and specifically increasing it in the correct and accurate way, because the focus of video modeling is making sure that the activity is implemented correctly. In this presentation, I'll be going over the methods and particularly the data collection from the article.
I'm Matt. I live in a suburb of Grand Rapids, Michigan. This is my 2nd semester at Ball State. I was particularly interested in this study because I've never used video modeling and would like to broaden my clinical horizons, as well as getting more into yoga for the mental health program. I will be covering the overall design of this study as well as the different phases, including treatment integrity.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Houston. I live in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm in my 3rd semester at Ball State. And I was interested in this study because yoga is something that I have done in the past, and I'm looking to get more into it, more for stress relief and some more physical movement. So I thought this might be a good way to get back into it. And video modeling is a brand new concept for me, so I thought it was a nice way to combine those things. I will be going over our individual results from the study and highlighting our graphs.
My name is Sheena Mikula. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I am currently in my 4th semester at Ball State in the ABA program. I was interested in replicating the study due to wanting to just keep myself healthy while being pregnant this semester, and I believed that yoga would be a simple and good form of physical activity to accomplish this and stay committed. For the presentation, I will be covering the conclusions drawn from the original study as well as our study, and identify any of the limitations that were presented in each of the studies.
So what is video modeling? Video modeling is simply providing a learner with a video clip of an expert performing a desired target behavior or skill. And in our case, this included 3 different yoga poses. Another component that is usually present when using this technique is called video feedback, and that is where a learner is able to watch a video of themselves performing the skill. And in some cases, an instructor or coach is giving some kind of feedback to the learner about their performance. Some studies have shown that using video modeling and video feedback together can improve the acquisition and performance of many complex skills. In the ABA world, it's often used to teach various skills such as social interaction, appropriate play, and daily living skills, all things that have many steps. And video modeling has also been found to be particularly beneficial for various athletic skills that involve multiple step body movements. There is quite a bit of literature available on video modeling in general. We chose to kind of focus on some studies where video modeling was used specifically in areas of physical activity, such as gymnastics, volleyball, and golf. And all of these studies used some combination of video modeling and video feedback as their intervention. One study done by Boyer et al. In 2009 found that video feedback improved the skill performance for 4 female gymnasts. And when using video modeling and evaluation, they were able to improve their technique more quickly and therefore reduce the number of practice sessions needed to improve their skills. Another study done in 2002 by Zatu et al. Demonstrated how beneficial video modeling could be in physical education, especially with students who are beginners, which was also the case with our article. We did not have, and the participants didn't have any prior experience with the skill before starting. So this study concluded that watching a model helps a person create their own response and compare their own performance with the feedback. And it makes it easier to convey a visual representation of a motor activity rather than just verbally explaining it, especially when there's multiple steps involved. And they also suggested that having a high status expert, so someone that is very proficient in the skill, modeling the activity helps improve the efficacy of the skill better than having a model that might not be so familiar with the skill. And a third study done by Mayone and Miranda in 2006 discussed the effects of video modeling on the improvement of golf swings. And there are 3 groups: self-guided, verbal instruction, and video modeling. In the first post-test after the intervention, the self-guided group was actually found to have the most improvement. But then in the second post-test, video modeling group showed the most improvement out of the 3. So this suggested that while video modeling can be a very helpful tool in increasing performance, it may take a while to develop the new skill. So our study that we chose to replicate was called The Effects of Video Self-Evaluation on Skill Acquisition with Yoga Postures, and this was done in 2015 by Downs et al. And our study focused specifically on increasing accuracy of yoga poses with 2 beginner participants. So these participants had no prior experience with yoga before participating in the study. And in their introduction, the researchers talked a lot about how yoga is gaining popularity, especially in the group fitness realm. And they felt that in this type of setting, learners are not getting adequate feedback on their performance in order to improve their accuracy quickly. And they emphasize the importance of practicing yoga accurately because failure to do so can cause injury in some cases. So their intervention, in addition to video modeling and video feedback, also included a third component called video self-evaluation. And this is where not only does the learner watch an expert perform the skill and get to watch themselves, but they are also rating themselves using some sort of rating scale or task analysis. And so the researchers felt that this could provide opportunities for the learners to evaluate their performance and potentially require less time with coaches and instructors. And the researchers also hypothesized that as learners were able to view their improvements via video feedback, this would serve as reinforcement and would make it more likely in the future that they would continue to improve on these skills. So the purpose of the original study was pretty clear and concise, and as stated in the article, the purpose is to assess video self-evaluation to increase the accuracy of yoga poses. So basically they wanted to determine if video modeling and self-evaluation could be a valuable tool in the way that yoga is taught. The purpose of our replication of the study was to see if as a group we could improve accuracy with yoga poses by utilizing the same techniques outlined in the study and to see if we could get similar results. So now I'm going to turn it over to Zach, who's going to go into more detail about our methods and procedures.
In regards to our methods, the participants in this study were 5 Ball State students, 3 female, 2 male, ages ranging from 28 to 43 years old, who self-selected into a group based on the time zone that they live in. The behaviors that we were tracking in the study were 3 separate yoga poses: downward facing dog, tree pose, and the warrior 2 pose. And those were defined by the task analyses that I'll be showing in a minute. The setting for this study, all poses were completed within the homes of the participants in a room that provided ample space to complete them. And the materials involved were a video recording device, which was a cell phone or a tablet that had an integrated camera, the yoga pose task analyses, a recorded video of a certified yoga instructor performing each pose, which was used and watched prior to baseline data collection, as well as a laptop to upload video for IOA data collection. The task analyses are as follows. The downward facing dog task analysis is composed of 7 separate steps that walk through each step in completing that pose. And that was how that was graded for accuracy. The tree pose task analysis, which consists of 5 different steps, utilized to grade the accuracy on that with that video self-evaluation model. And the Warrior 2 pose task analysis, which consisted of 9 individual steps to completing the Warrior 2 pose. And this is one of the videos that outlines the downward facing dog pose that was completed by a certified yoga instructor utilized in baseline data collection.
On your hips, up your toes, take your hips back and up. Think about opening the back of your knees to straighten them. Arms straighten, head comes between arms. Maybe your heels touch the ground, maybe you don't. Fingers spread wide.
In regards to the data collection, for baseline data collection, participants viewed the recording of the certified yoga instructor performing their first pose prior to the first baseline session, such as the video we just watched, which was the downward facing dog baseline video. After viewing the recording, the participants recorded themselves completing the pose that they had viewed. It was done a varying number of times per pose, which ranged from 3 to 10, depending upon when the data stabilized, at which point they could shift that pose into the intervention phase. These baseline recordings were sent to a designated partner in the group who acted as the researcher for that individual. That researcher used the task analysis to score the baseline data and then returned it to the individual so we could have baseline data to graph. And then that process was repeated for each pose. In order to determine the accuracy to be graphed, the number of correctly completed steps on the task analysis was divided by the total number of opportunities, and then multiplied by 100 to receive a percentage. And when each pose switched into the intervention phase, data collection went in a slightly different way. Each participant would record themselves completing each pose, and immediately after completing the pose, they would review the video, looking at the task analysis, and score their performance from that video. It was repeated for each pose in the intervention phase across all sessions for a total of 18 attempts per pose, including both baseline and intervention. After each video, or after each recording, the video was scored immediately. 33% of intervention videos were sent to the participants' assigned researcher to complete IOA data to verify the integrity of the data. And the same calculation was used to calculate the accuracy in this case, the number of correct steps divided by the total opportunities times 100 to reach a percentage. I am now going to pass along to Matt, who's going to go into the treatment integrity as well as some more of the method of this study.
Hello. Our study was a multiple baseline across behavior study where the original study looked at 3 yoga poses completed by 2 college male students. The study was looking for the intervention effect, which was how accurate the steps were during the intervention phase. For the study, there were 1 to 3 attempts per pose per session. So there were anywhere from 3 to 9 yoga poses being done in any given session. Video recording was used to provide feedback during the intervention phase. And this was done with both the researcher providing feedback on the video as well as self-evaluation based on the task analysis. So the baseline phase, the researcher served as a model in the original study during the first 2 sessions of baseline. In our replication, we utilized the videos being done by a certified yoga instructor. No feedback was given based on the baseline phases in either the original study or our replication. Each baseline session was approximately 10 minutes in length, depending on the number of poses being completed during that particular session. The baseline during the replication also varied in length depending on the number of sessions being done during that session. There was some variability based on the number of poses, and some of the poses being longer or shorter. During the treatment phase of the original study, there was a video self-evaluation whereby the participants recorded themselves completing the yoga poses, and then after being shown how to use the task analysis by the researcher, they would evaluate themselves based on that task analysis to determine a % correct for that trial. This was the same method that we used in our replication. We recorded ourselves completing the yoga poses, and then it scored ourselves based on the task analysis. During the original study, the researchers did assist with the scoring for the first 2 sessions to make sure that the participants understood how to utilize the task analysis. Our group discussed the task analysis during our weekly meetings, so we did independent scoring. The subsequent sessions during the original study were scored independently using their video, and retraining occurred in the original study if the percentages fell below 80%. During our replication, no one fell below 80% during the treatment phase. In order to monitor for treatment integrity, inter-observer agreement was completed using 33% of the videos both in the original study as well as the replication. Independent observers scored the videos in the original study. In the replication, using a round-robin method, we had partners from our group score our videos to provide an inter-observer agreement. All of this was based on the task analysis. So we calculated percentage correct and determined what of the sessions had inter-observer agreement and which did not. This was done by using the agreements divided by the agreements and disagreements based on each task analysis for the 3 poses that we explored during this study. The original study had IOA data for their participants of the first participant, 96% total between all 3 poses. The second participant had IOA agreement for 94% of their poses. For the replication, each of the 5 participants had 100% of IOA across all 3 poses. I will now pass it on to Jennifer, who will be discussing the results.
Great. I'm going to share with you the graphs that we had that showed our individual results. Beginning with Zach, his graph shows that in baseline, for downward facing dog, he already started at 100%. So once he got to the intervention phase, he's maintained 100% across all trials. In Warrior 2 pose, in baseline, he had a range, his range was 88% across all trials. So then when he was in the intervention phase, he increased to 100% across all trials. For tree pose, Zach also maintained 100% accuracy for the task analysis across all trials. Moving on to Jennifer, who is me. For tree pose, my baseline data showed that I maintained 80% accuracy across all trials. And then in intervention, I maintained 100% accuracy across all trials. So I had an increase, an average from 80% in baseline to 100% in intervention. For downward facing dog, my baseline range was 85 to 100%. Then for intervention, I maintained 100% across all trials for an increase of from 92.5% to 100%. In tree pose, I showed a little bit more variability across baseline. My range was 66 to 100%, and then an increase in intervention phase to 100%, giving an increase in average in baseline from 82.7% to 100%. For Rachel, she began in Warrior 2 pose. Her baseline trials maintained at 89%. And then in intervention, she showed 78 to 100% accuracy. So her accuracy improved from 89% average to 92.67% in Warrior 2 pose. For downward facing dog, her baseline data ranged from 71 to 86%. And then in intervention, she improved to 67 to 100% range. On an average, that was from 83% to 87.8%. In tree pose, Rachel started out in baseline range of 40 to 60% and then jumped way up in intervention to a range of 60 to 100%. So her average improved from 55.6% to 84.4%. For Matt, his baseline range for downward facing dog was 42.86 to 57.14%. And then he increased in the intervention phase of a range of 85.74% to 100%. So his averages improved from a baseline of 50% way up to 94.9%. In Warrior 2 pose, Matt began in baseline at 30 to 40% range and then improved to a range of 80 to 100%. So his averages for Warrior 2 improved from 38.33% clear up to 97%. In tree pose, Matt started at a baseline range of 50 to 83.33%. And in intervention, his range was 83.33% up to 100%. His averages across tree pose were 66.67% for baseline and 92.59% for intervention phase. So moving on to Sheena, she began her poses with tree pose. Her baseline range was 80 to 100%, and then in intervention, she improved her range from 89 to 100%. Her averages remained the same at 93%. For downward facing dog pose, her baseline range was 86 to 100%, and her intervention remained 86 to 100%. However, her averages went up 1% from 93 to 94%. In Warrior 2 pose, Sheena's baseline range was 89 to 100%, and her intervention range was the same. Her averages improved from 97% to 99%. So our graphs show across all participants that we did show improvement in our accuracy, we didn't show quite as much movement as in the original study, which I will pull up momentarily. So the original study showed that the first participant had quite low baseline data and then improved significantly across all poses. And then the second participant, that was the second participant, sorry. First participant had also quite low baseline and then an increase, a lot more variability across all phases of baseline and treatment. So that wraps up the charts and the results. I'll turn it over to Sheena.
Okay. When looking at the two studies, looking at the results, the two studies had a similarity between them that both overall demonstrated an increase in performance in performing the same simple beginner yoga poses over from the intervention phases from the baseline. Some differences that were mostly noted were between the studies was the treatment integrity. The original studies IOA data did fall below 80 with both of their participants and required an added video feedback phase, whereas our study, our IOA data remained fairly high and never fell below 80, so no additional video feedback phases were needed. Also, the original study provided a maintenance phase at the end, which is ideal, but due to time restraints and the project being due, we were not able to collect data for a maintenance phase in our study. From our studies, we concluded that we all increased in our yoga performance and benefited from using self-evaluation and video feedback from another group member. This was evident in our results during intervention, seeing an increase in that skill acquisition in each beginner yoga pose. However, even though that both studies saw the positive effects of video modeling and self-video reflection, both studies, however, did present some limitations. Both participants from the first original study needed to be retrained for self-evaluation during the intervention due to their IOA data falling below. This can suggest that video self-evaluation may not always be successful and may require a coach or a researcher to evaluate the quality of self-evaluation. The study also talked about their slightly increasing trend with their baseline, like longer baselines, but they did introduce intervention phases only when baseline data was stable. Some of the limitations during our study replicating it was the vagueness of this particular study. It created difficulties for us interpreting how part of the procedures were carried out. For example, the study did not provide a task analysis of the poses, so we created our own based on the knowledge of a professional trained yoga instructor. Our first choice of study also that we chose to replicate was not approved, which created a shorter time span to collect data. Along with that, some of the participants where they lived had inclement weather and had power outages and made it difficult to carry out having the multiple assessment sessions, and instead some of the video sessions were recorded in just one session. Since the yoga poses that were selected for this study were for beginners, the task analysis were very short and concise and simple and listed minimal steps, which did not create much room for improvement. The study had a component where researchers had to provide feedback to the videos to the other participants, and each group member this served for us to have multiple roles in the study besides just being the participant. which might have created having more knowledge and knowing how to perform the yoga poses more accurately, which might have affected our results. Knowing these, some things that I wanted to touch on were some things that future research could consider. One was, since the study demonstrated a positive effect in using video modeling and self-evaluation and increasing performance of skill acquisition, it'd be interesting to see if video modeling utilized in other recreational activities, including sports, to evaluate if they have the same potential to enhance performance in those skill areas. Since the study utilized simple beginner yoga poses, it would be pleasing to see if the same intervention of video modeling would yield the same results when incorporating other novice yoga practitioners or just a variety of yoga poses or even more challenging poses. This study implemented both self-evaluation and video modeling to enhance the performance in yoga poses, but future research should evaluate the effectiveness of just using one technique, maybe just self-evaluation, to see if just having a task analysis alone would improve an individual's performance. In closing, the use of video modeling and self-evaluation were evaluated in both of these studies and evidenced to be effective strategies in improving skill performance with yoga.